Hello, my name is David Kirkland Garner. I'm an assistant professor of composition and theory at the University of South Carolina School of Music and also assistant director of the Southern Exposure New Music Series. And I'm here with the composer Nicky Sohn, who wrote the beautiful piece, Dear Friend, for the faculty at the U of SC School of Music. And we had so much fun with the piece, and we're so happy to be able to work with you, Nicky. So we wanted to have a little chat to hear more about the piece and hear more about you. So first of all, Nicky, could you tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Nicky Sohn. I am based in Houston. This is my third year in Houston, but I'm originally from Korea. I came to the US when I was 14, and I lived in New York for a really long time, 9 years, LA for 2 years, and I traveled a lot in the gap year that I had before coming to Rice. And I've been here ever since. Yeah, 3 years. Um, I've been writing a lot of chamber music, and also during the pandemic, I was working on a lot of solo and duet pieces because we couldn't really have rehearsals and a lot of it was virtual. So it was really fun to work on the piece for University of South Carolina because it was a little more than what I was writing before. It was for flute, violin, cello, and piano. So having those four instruments to write for, it was a very, very cool experience for me.
Yeah, well, it's such a beautiful piece, and we're so thrilled about it. So what could you tell us a little bit about where and when you wrote this piece? Like where were you when you were writing this, and how does that tie into the piece itself?
Right. So last year, so 2021, May of 2021, I was in Ucross, Wyoming. That was actually my first time traveling out of Houston since the pandemic. So it was somewhat nervous to actually take planes again and go away. But it was a artist retreat, and in Ucross, there were maybe like 10 people in that like large, like vast land, and especially because it was still we were very cautious about COVID. We had a lot of like spaces in between people. So I think I saw maybe the total of like 6 people in 2 weeks. I was very, very isolated. I had this beautiful studio with piano and like really big, like nice space all by myself. And I would wake up in the morning and open the curtains, and there would be all these like animal friends just visiting me in the morning. And so that was totally like my Disney princess moment. And so I wanted to write a piece that reflected those mornings that I had in Ucross. So it was sort of like a wordplay to come up with the title Dear Friend. It sounds like a dear friend, but it's actually like the animal deer. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, the piece is so beautiful, and you also mentioned in your program notes an unexpected visit from your sort of childhood and your memories. So
Right.
what about your childhood is plays out in Dear Friend or in the textures and music?
Right. So growing up, my sister and I were huge fans of Disney princess movies. We watched Cinderella like until, those like tapes were dragged out and we had to get another one. Like nowadays, like my little brother doesn't know what a tape looks like, but And so we would watch Cinderella, like Snow White, all those things like religiously. And so since the pandemic, I haven't been able to go back home. My family is in Korea, and I haven't seen my family over 3 years now, actually. Especially since the pandemic, like the direct flight from Houston to Korea is no longer there. So in order for me to go back, it takes I don't even know how many hours, and like these rules change and all that. So I've had like a very severe case of like homesickness, especially in Wyoming, where I was very, very alone and like even more isolated than I was in Houston, because in Houston I would still go to school, like see my friends, but in Ucross I was really alone. So like having just like this, I don't know, like void of like seeing my family and like missing them, and having those like very magical mornings, like that sort of like came together in my head, and like yeah, it made me think about the times that I would watch all those movies with my sister. Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, there's certainly such a vital energy in the piece and a playfulness, and it's like a sweet sincerity and um, just really extraordinary textures that you incorporate throughout. And I can see that those connections, although there's so much more happening in the piece too. So one thing that I read in your biography was, you say in listening to your music, you might hear influences from jazz greats such as Chet Baker, Bill Evans, Jobim, as well as composers Michael Torke, Del Tradici. And I can certainly hear that, in the way you'll sit in one place and kind of loop rhythmically and evolve organically. But one thing that struck me very very clearly was a French influence. So I'm thinking of the really rich extended. Not to get, I'm going to get a little music nerdy here for a second, but the beautifully rich extended harmonies and the Lydian sound throughout a lot of it. A lot of I was reminded of like Duraflé and Kirkland and maybe Poulenc even. So is that something that are those composers that you look to, or do you see that connection?
Absolutely. I mean, Ravel and Poulenc are like my gods, and I listened to a lot of Ravel actually when I was in Wyoming. So I think that also like definitely like went into my music a little bit. And because I had such a beautiful piano in that space, I was reading through a lot of music too. I mean, I really didn't have anything else to do but to play piano and compose in Ucross. So I was reading through like some of the Ravel pieces, I mean, very, very slowly. And also I was working on several impromptus of Poulenc at school because I had to take piano lessons as one of my requirements. So like I think those definitely like played into my piece, especially because I had a piano part and I was working a lot at the piano. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you can really hear that in the piece, and you can certainly hear, the piano writing especially is just really beautiful and rich and sonorous. So it makes sense that you were kind of alone in this place with a piano and some Ravel and Poulenc scores and this and little animals running around outside, so that it all comes together in this piece, and really, really beautiful. So what are you working on now? What kinds of projects do you have?
Right now, I'm working on several different pieces. So I have a Sinfonietta piece that'll be premiered at the National Orchestra Institute and Festival this summer. So I'm working on that. I'm also working on a string ensemble piece for Kinetic Ensemble, which is a string ensemble based in Houston. And I'm also supposed to be working on a violin concerto, which I haven't started yet, but I'll get to it soon. Yeah.
Of
So
course.
it's been really like exciting to like start working on bigger pieces again rather than just like working on like one solo piece. I mean, that's also been like really, really fun to like learn more about each instrument in depth, but having this like multiple voices and multiple people to work with, it's very exciting.
Very cool. Well, thank you for spending some time with me today, and thank you so much. It's such an honor to. It's such a pleasure to be able to commission this work and play a really teeny part in bringing it to life. And I think it's just extraordinary. So I hope everyone will follow all of your music in the years to come. So
Well,
thank you again, and really pleasure to talk with you.
yeah, and I would also like to thank all the players that just like they sound amazing. I heard the recording and I just could not believe that that's what I wrote. I mean, it was all from them and like I would really, really like to thank their work and time. Yeah, and thank you.